This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 7 of A Geek Leader. Today I want to talk about fear. Dealing with fear, overcoming fear, just all the things that we're afraid of today when it comes to leadership and stepping out of our comfort zone and doing the right thing as a leader. So I want to give some specific concrete examples of how to deal with fear, some steps that you can do today. We're all afraid of something, and that's one thing that is true for everybody and anybody. No one is completely fearless. A lot of times we look at certain people and certain leaders and certain people in management positions and we'll say, well, they can do that because of their title, or they can do that because they've earned it and they're not afraid to do that. They're not afraid to speak up at meetings. But in reality, a lot of times we are afraid. We're afraid of what we're going to say. We're afraid of how people are going to understand what we say, how they're going to take it, but we say it anyway. We do it anyway. A lot of times entrepreneurs, people will say, well, they're not afraid of anything. They'll start a business, they'll quit their job, but they are afraid. But what makes them different is that they do it anyway. So I want to give you guys a few things that you can do to help deal with fear. Number one, you can play it out. Go ahead and ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And then play it all the way to the end. So, for example, when I wanted to become a manager, I had this choice of I can either stay doing what I'm doing in my current company, I can go out, try to find a new job somewhere else, or I can go talk to my boss and say, look, I want an opportunity to lead people. I want the chance to have a title to do more than just leading in my current role. I want to be able to step up and take a management responsibility. So I played that out in my head. What's the worst that can happen if I go ask my boss for this opportunity? Well, I guess he could give it to me and I could fail, right? Or he could just laugh at me and tell me I'm not ready for it. Or maybe he'll fire me because he thinks that I'll never be as good as I could be, right? All those are situations that could happen that I played out in my head. So then I looked at the next question. What's the likelihood of these things actually happening? Well, my boss is a nice guy. He's not going to laugh at me. He's not going to fire me for asking. Those are very, very, very small possibilities. But I could fail. That's a real one. I could really maybe be given an opportunity and not be able to succeed. So the next question you want to ask yourself, once you've discovered the likelihood of these things actually happening, ask yourself, how can you reduce the likelihood that these things will happen? What can you do today that will prevent these things or limit the impact that these things have? So I said, well, if I get that leadership position or that management position and I want to step up, what can I do to reduce the fact that I might fail? Well, I can work harder. I can learn. I can study outside on how to be a good leader, how to manage. I can read books on the subject. I can watch TED Talks. There's lots of things that I can do to reduce that likelihood. But there's still a chance, right? There's still that likelihood that it could happen. And the fourth thing is you need to ask yourself, how can you recover from it? So if it does happen, if the worst of the worst happens, how can you get back to where you are today? What can you do to get back there? And for me, it was quite simple. Well, if the worst thing happens and I did get fired, well, then I can dust off my resume and I can go back and get a job doing what I am now. I'm a pretty good interviewer. I do pretty well at my current job. I was pretty good technically. I shouldn't have any problem finding another job. The job market's pretty hot right now. And all those things just help boost up my confidence and help me realize that fear isn't holding me back. It can't hold me back. I make my own decisions. I take control. Right? And one of the best acronyms that I heard from fear is false evidence appearing real. And basically that's what it is. Fear is in our head. We play out the worst and we create this false evidence and we make it seem as if it's real, even though it's not. So one of the things that I do is just understand that everyone deals with fear. Speaking into this microphone, I'm terrified of speaking into a microphone for some reason. I don't mind if I'm up on stage talking, but in a microphone, I get so nervous, I guess because I know it's going to be recorded and people can go back and listen to it. And I'm sure the first few episodes are unlistenable, but that's a fear that we deal with every day. And in my head, when I'm giving this podcast, there's a fear that says that I can't do this, that someone's going to laugh at me, that people are not going to like what I'm giving. But what I realize is even the most successful people have fear, but they do it anyway. And one of the things that I heard not too long ago is actually at a keynote from Pat Flynn. He said that you need to run to fear. The things you fear the most are what you're most likely need to be doing. And I've actually heard this several times recently, is that fear is what you need to be doing. And I think that's so true. I need to be giving this podcast because it's making me a better speaker. And if you listen to episode 0 and episode 7, hopefully you'll see an improvement. You'll see that I'm probably not saying quite as much. I'm still saying it, way too much, but not as much as I was back then. I have a little bit more confidence in my voice. I know a little bit more about what I'm going to say when I'm up here talking. And I realize that it's not the end of the world if it is bad, right? It's going to show progress as I improve in the future. But it's what I need to do. It's what I have to do to get better. All right, the next thing that comes along with fear is this idea called the imposter syndrome. And I know you've probably heard about this before, but the idea is that, me giving this podcast, am I being an imposter? Do people, who am I to talk about leadership? Who am I? What do I have that these other people have so much more than me? They're way better speakers. They're way better podcasters than I am. So why am I doing this, right? That's the imposter syndrome stepping in. And it's the one telling me that I need to get over this. I can't do this, right? That I'm not a real speaker. I'm not a real podcaster. I'm not a real leader. I felt the same thing when I was creating my first app. I said, I'm not an app developer. I can't make a mobile app. What if the App Store rejects me, right? Who am I? I'm just a guy. Yeah. But then I put the app out there. Next thing you know, I have 4 million downloads, and it's a big deal, right? So the idea that you aren't something is true. You're not until you do it, right? You are an imposter until you step up and do it. And that's what makes you real. So I want to give you some tips that I found in a couple of articles that I'll link up in the show notes about getting over the imposter syndrome. Right, and one of the tips of advice is just to accept the fact that you actually played a role in getting to where you're at. So for me giving this podcast and the imposter syndrome that I have, saying that I shouldn't do this, I don't have the knowledge that these other leaders have that could be, giving the same podcast and doing a much better job at it, is the fact that I need to step back and say, hey, I've been leading people for a decade now. I've had management experience. I've had people reporting to me, and I've had a pretty successful run at it. I got to give myself a little bit of credit that I've gotten to where I am today, right? And that helps you get a little bit more confidence in yourself and realize that maybe you're not an imposter. Maybe you can do this. The next thing you need to do is focus on adding value, right? Focus on adding value. Don't think about what others think of you, but think about how you can help others. Right, one of my favorite quotes is by C.S. Lewis. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And that's exactly what we need to do if we want to get over the imposter syndrome. Think about yourself less. Don't worry about how people perceive you, but think about how you can help them. All right, next up is to stop complaining. Stop complaining about what your limitations are and what you don't have. Stop comparing yourself to those people, to that person. You don't compare yourself to Warren Buffett or John Rockefeller or Einstein, because those are world-class people, right? So don't compare yourself to the guy next to you. Just compare yourself to yourself. You ask any of the great runners, what are they trying to beat? Their personal best. They're not trying to compete with, the world record holder, right? They're trying to beat their personal best. They're comparing themselves to themselves. And that's what's most important. All right, being wrong doesn't make you fake. All right, so just understand that just because you're wrong doesn't mean that you're not real, right? That you're not an expert in this field just because you make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Warren Buffett has lost money in the stock market. We all do it, right? Presidents are wrong all the time. And luckily, there's media that catches us on that, right? So we all got to pay attention and realize what's going on, right? Realize that when you're holding back, you're robbing the world. So don't hold back. You have something of value to provide to people, and you need to give that to them. Don't hold back. Understanding that you're going to die is another really important way to get over the imposter syndrome. Just understand that you're going to die one day, you're going to be gone, and no one ever has regrets about, well, that didn't work out, but I tried. But they do have regrets that I never tried. I don't know what I could be. Realize that no one knows what they're doing. One of my favorite quotes is from Notes to a Software Team Lead. And in that book, he says, there are no experts here. There's only us. And I love that quote because it makes so much sense. There aren't anybody that is absolute expert in any field that you're in. There's people that are experts, but they don't know everything. You have a unique perspective, a unique value that you can add. And being a leader and stepping up is having the courage just to add that value and to be brave. Right? And faking things does actually work sometimes. Right? You know, a lot of people say, well, fake it till you make it. And you say, well, then I'm a fraud. But that doesn't make you a fraud. Just think about when you're a child and you're learning how to talk. What are you doing? You're imitating. You're imitating the words of other people. That's how you learn. That's the first step in finding your voice, is imitation. Is learning how to replicate something else. When you're learning to play music for the first time, that's what you do, is you play songs that you know. You replicate those songs. And when you get good at that, then you can create your own songs and your own music. The same thing's true with speaking. When you're speaking, the best way to practice and becoming a speaker is to memorize other people's speeches and be able to replicate that. And that's how you become good at something. But then you find your own niche, your own voice, what makes it different, how you can add a unique perspective and a unique twist on it, and then how you can add value. Right? Being creative is not coming up with something totally new that's never been done before. It's about just taking what's already there and making it a little bit better. Right? So if you want to get over the imposter syndrome, you just got to get out there and do it. You got to try. Right? And hopefully this helps and adds value and gives some people some courage so they can step out and be a leader. Remember, you don't have to have a title to be a leader. You can lead to the left and to the right. So check us out in the show notes. Visit it at ageekleader.com/episode 7. And I'll have some articles linked up, and then I'll put that quote from C.S. Lewis in here too. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. All right, thanks a lot.